Hi, this is North County PC Solutions, and today we're going to do a basic cleanup on a standard tower. This is a Gateway. It's an older one. It's about 5 years old. It's running Windows XP, and it's a standard ATX tower, an ATX power supply. Really basic, simple system. Okay, let's take a look at some of the stuff we got here. It's got a lot of USB ports on the front and stuff, and it's got drives. And one of the things, when you do a cleanup on a system, especially if you're a technician, it's a good time to write down the make and the model of the computer, and also the serial number of the machine, the service tag number of the machine, which is different than the serial number, you'll see too. And then also on the back you'll see a Microsoft sticker. Write down your installation codes and stuff like that. If you ever have a complete meltdown and for whatever reason you can't recover your system, you're going to need this information to reinstall Windows on there. So it's good to go ahead and back up that kind of information, have it on hand. One of the good things to do with it is, after you pull off the side of the case, is to write it all down on a sticker, put it on the inside of this, and that way you'll never lose it. Okay, a couple things on safety. Again, as I usually emphasize, if you don't have any training in electrical safety and electronic safety, you might not want to try this, or you might want to consult with somebody who does have some experience in it. The other thing is, let's talk a little bit about why you should keep it this clean. For several reasons, keeping your machine clean will help prolong the life of your computer. The dust, for one thing, can increase static electricity in the machine, which can cause a spark. And anything with small, like microprocessors and memory, anything based in CMOS technology, the junctions can get popped in that very easily. So that's one good reason to keep the dust and stuff out of there. The other is heat. As you can probably see on the back of this fan, and I'm going to get a little closer for you. There's a lot of muck on this fan here, and there's a fan down below that you can kind of see that on as well. What happens is, those fans can't relieve the warmer air out of there as fast as if that was cleaned out. Heat is one of the #1 killers of computers, so you always want to try to keep it as clean as possible, and you don't want to obstruct the air. Another thing we're going to go over when we do open up the machine is we're going to take a look at the way the cables are running and stuff like that. This is an older system, so it's running the ribbon cables, so it's IDE drive controllers instead of SATA. So they had the big thick ribbon cables instead of the smaller cables. That's fine, it's not as fast, doesn't really affect reliability or anything that much, but one thing that is a problem with it is it does obstruct the airflow more. So if you have a really messed up, tangled up web in there, it's a good idea to have some zip ties along when you do the cleaning. You can adjust the cables that are in there, and you can zip tie them up and make it a little bit cleaner in there. What this does is it increases the airflow of the machine from the bottom to the top. And that's another interesting point with airflow. Since heat rises, most cases will have the power supply at the top, the power supply and the fan to the power supply, and you'll see the switch and you'll see this plug here. And you want to keep this to the factory setting here. This changes between 110 and 220 voltage in case you're in Europe or whatnot. So you want to keep it on the 210 setting. And so what we're going to do first is, before I even open up the case, I can see that the back of this is a mess. So I'd like to at least blast off the exterior, front and back of it, so that after I clean out the outside of it and I come back and do one final blast on the outside, I'm not just blowing the dirt back into the machine. So we're going to go ahead and start there. So let's get... Oh, this is a brand new one. Okay, now right now I'm just using standard compressed air out of a can that you can get at Costco or PC shops. probably Walmart or just about anywhere. Nowadays you can find this stuff anywhere. Technicians, if you're using an air compressor, make sure you check your precipitation filters. And also, before you blast the computer, turn it away from the machine and blast it somewhere else first, because if there is a little bit of mist in the compressor, that's going to be the first thing that comes out of there usually. Don't go straight to the computer using the compressor. That looks like it's pretty much stuck on the inside, so we're going to use our lazy Suze in there to spin it around, and we're going to do the same thing with the front. And it's usually kind of tricky here. And you can see that there's a lot of junk that sometimes hides near the horizontal angle with these particular cases. If they have throughputs here, you really got to blast those too. It's nice to hide those. Okay, so we're done with the outside of it as far as the initial blast. You're usually going to need a few things. Yeah, usually you'll need a Phillips screwdriver. In case you drop something, you don't want to use magnetic tools in there because you could actually hurt the chips. So I usually use just a plain pair of tweezers. And if I need to use any of these and cut them, I found the quickest way is to just use fingernail clippers. Works better than anything else. Okay, for you A+ students out there that are getting ready to take your exam, remember about the heat. And also, people working on PCs, going into towers and stuff like that, have one of the highest rates of hand infections, because not only are they getting cut on metal, possibly, but these things get so dirty inside, they can hold pet hair, dander, even small animal feces in some cases if people aren't aware of where the machine's at and what's going inside it. So I know it's kind of disturbing to know, but it does happen. So always keep some antibacterial around, and you might even want to have some triple antibiotic in case you do get cut. The only other thing you really need for this is a small flashlight. The reason being, as a tech, when you're cleaning up the machine, take that time also to look at the motherboard and the components and stuff, make sure everything's secured in there. But look at the discrete components on the boards and stuff too. The capacitors and whatnot. Is there a bulge in the capacitor? Could that cause a potential problem later? And that's one of the things we're going to go ahead and do as we do a cleanup on these guys. Now bear in mind, when I say cleanup right now, I'm talking about a hardware cleanup. If I say system cleanup, I'm talking about software. I'm going in with something to remove cookies, temp files, malware, and stuff like that. So right now I'm actually doing a hardware cleanup. I should kind of emphasize that. Now I've already loosened this a little, so this should pop right out. And you can tell this has been opened before because of the break in the seal here. And the other thing technicians want to notice, and customers, you too, if you buy a computer from the store, make sure your warranty is already avoiding stuff. You can do that by calling them with your serial number and your service tag. Whoever, this is Gateway, you get a hold of them in this case. The reason being, if anything happens to this computer and it's under warranty, you want them to pay for it on their dime. In this case, this computer is about 5 or 6 years old, so it's not under any kind of warranty or anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and open it up. Okay, and this one kind of, instead of pulling straight out, it hinges. So there's all kinds of kind of interesting ways that these will Another thing I forgot to mention when you're doing the cleanup on the one that's just, especially one that's just dirty, you don't want to do it near your clean machines. You want to have an area set aside that's specified just for cleaning out these machines. And usually, to be honest, I'll take them outside. I don't want the dust in the shop or anywhere where it can hurt other machines and stuff. So Generally, I'll take it outside, but for the sake of the video and the backdrop and stuff, I'm going to go ahead and do this indoors. So that being said, I'll go ahead and take a look around in there. Okay, let's get a closer look in there now. That's exactly what we're doing. All the fans, power supply. This is, like I was saying, it's a good design because you got your cards at the bottom, you got your power supply at the top, which is good. Heat rises, so you want to, if your power supply were at the bottom, you're producing more heat to your processor and your cards and stuff, so it's always a good idea to make sure that this is at the top. And they were generous with the fans in this for a factory computer as well. And I won't go too crazy on this one because I know you don't want to sit here and watch me do this all day. But you'd want to get in there a little closer and stuff and really, make sure. Now, the part I was talking about with the capacitors and stuff, if any of these here were bulging, and notice I'm using the rubber end of a pencil, a pencil is another good thing to have if you're replacing, say, you're replacing a memory card or something on one of these slots down here, because if there's any residual gunk on the contacts on those, the tip of a pencil is a really convenient way to get that off of there without messing anything up. You generally don't want to use too many solvents if you can help it. And so it's looking pretty clean now. We pretty much got the dust out of there. So what I would do is I would go around and double check the discrete components, and I mean resistors, capacitors, chips and stuff like that. Some kind of funny things can happen with heat, as well as frying chips and the motherboard and stuff. They can also cause something to back out of a socket. You may need to reseat a memory stick, or maybe you may need to reseat a network card or something like that. You can always check those and jiggle those while you're in there. And you can always check your connectors and stuff on these. Now this one, I've actually, to be honest, I've seen a lot worse, and this here does actually use some SATA. If there was a bunch of ribbon cables running around and stuff obstructing these fans, I would go in with some zip ties and I would tie that up more and clean it up. But this one's not too bad, so we're not really going to worry about that today with this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this stuff off the bottom away from the machine before I close it back up, get one last blast, and then I'm going to double check the side that I opened up, and then, so you can see this, and Tex, if there's anything I forgot to mention, go ahead and give me some feedback on this video as well, because I don't always cover every little detail. There's a lot to remember in this. So. Okay. Sometimes, like in the case of this one, it's easier to turn it on its side to put the case on, but I wanted it on the Lazy Susan so that I could spin it around a little bit and let you see the inside of it, because you have to actually kind of line this up at a tilt. It's hard to do while it's standing up. It's going to be an obstinate one. Okay, that little guy's in. Before I tilt it up, since this one's kind of an awkward one to line up, I'm going to go ahead and put these in. If you're not going very far with these, you can just leave them hand tight, especially for my own. If I have these kind of connectors, I will usually just leave them hand tight because I can get in and out of there very quickly. But if I'm going to be transporting this a little ways, I will probably want to tighten it down just a little bit more to make sure nothing can come loose. Okay, now that we've got that done, I'm going to give the outside one last blast. Okay, sorry about that if I didn't get all that for you. We tilted that on the side, put that back on. One last blast on the outside, and unfortunately I'll probably push just a little bit of it back inside, but you got most of it out of it. Okay. Let's turn back up. And now I'm going to take a look at the front and give it one last blast as well. And let's see a little more fly out of this. You could go back and forth for days. The last thing you want to do, you never want to spray anything directly on the exterior, the front, of the back of the machine, because you're going to get fluids in there and you don't want that. But if you take just a slightly damp cloth, some people will use mild solvents and stuff. I don't really like to do that if I can help it. And this one's not too bad. So we're just going to give it a quick wipe. It's good for the machine because it eliminates some of the dust from coming back, and it's good for the customer because it's just kind of shows that you take a little bit of pride in your work. So it's a win-win to take the time to do that. And don't go over any of the connectors with it. Okay, and while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and double check some of these connectors. Up here, that's right here. This is where your basic power cable is going to go. This one here you want to leave set to 110. If you switch that's going to go to 220. That could mess up your power supply. The zero in the straight line, the zero means it's an open circuit. That means it's off, and the line means that it's on. So leave it to off. And by the way, it's a good idea, even though you made sure you unplugged it, which I should have mentioned in the beginning of this video, always discharge from the, after you turn it off, go ahead and hold this down for a couple seconds in the front here. Even though it's unplugged and you've taken the cable off, you've turned the power off, let it sit. I discharged it from the power here just to make sure there's no extra juice in the caps or anything in it. That's all. It's just a good habit to do, just an extra precaution. Okay, now these here, they're pretty simple. They'll actually show you, but these little banana plug looking guys here, these are your audio ins and outs, and they're marked. You'll see a microphone and a speaker and whatnot. All these here, this one has a ton of USB ports. Great. And that's actually USB 2 there, isn't it? Nice. Here, this one, it looks like a phone connector, but it's bigger. Instead of a phone line, that's actually your network cable goes in there. That's a category 5 cable, and the connector is called an RJ45. If it was a phone one, it would be smaller, and this one, for whatever reason, it's kind of cool, you know, for back in its time. We don't really use dial-up much anymore. But this one actually has both a network set up in there, and it has the old phone type of modem set up in there. So these here are actual phone lines. Instead of an RJ45 like the Cat 5 cable, these are called RJ11s. Fancy name for phone cable connector. And let's go over some of the others. Okay, there's a coax in there. This one has some actual media stuff on it, which is neat. These here, the round ones with the little edge on them. They're called PS2 ports, and they're generally for keyboards and mouses. And then you've got, if you have a really old printer, you have a parallel cable, a connector, a monitor cable, and this is a serial connector here. It's also called an RJ232. Oh, I'm sorry, RS232. And that's about it. You want to look, make sure those are all clean. There's nothing in the connectors and stuff before you put the computer back together. And this one's pretty self-explanatory. Everything is marked. And so that's pretty much it. We cleaned it out inside and out, put it back together. We inspected the board for any kind of blemishes, and we reseated the cards and all that to make sure there's not going to be any complications. We made sure that the airway is good. The cables and stuff in there aren't restricting the air to the point of heating it up or anything. And check the ports in the back. And that about sums it up. It's a good idea to do this at least a couple times a year. It will really prolong the life of your machine. And one other thing I'd like to mention that I didn't really get into with this, particular models like this Gateway and some of the older Hewlett-Packard machines have a power supply. The brand I believe is called Bestech. For whatever reason, for a few years there, they were having some difficulty with that model of power supply. This one here has actually been replaced. I believe we put an Antec in there. It's a really good brand. What was happening was those power supplies were so problematic that they were burning up motherboards, or they were burning up some of the IOs on them, like the sound card or the video card, causing all kinds of problems. This one, luckily, the indicator for it was that it just wasn't providing enough power when we were hooking up external USB drives to it. And that's a good way to test your power supply. Better than the little machines that you hook up to the power supply that say yes or no. They're really not accurate, to be honest, technicians. It's better to put a real load on it with USB powered devices, especially ones that require rotation, like external hard drives that are powered by USB. And that puts that delivers a real taxing load to the power supply. And if it starts having difficulties, then you'll know. That's probably what it is. Well, okay, I guess that's it. I hope this is something people can use, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.